remember the call afterwards. My doctor, who, like I said, is, he was like, I would get so upset with like things failing, but as soon as she called me, it was like this relief. And she just had this way of doing that, which is incredible out of a doctor.
Oh, you're going to get yourself hundreds of shots. You're going to feel like a doctor when you're done. Like, even that. So I'm just very open about it.
I give 99.9% credit to my wife. She did all my scheduling. She organized all my shots. She did all my orders. So definitely teamwork.
I was just going in there looking to freeze eggs and, oh, wow, is this my reality? Because this is not what I had in my plans whatsoever.
Happy holidays, everyone, and welcome to our special year-end recap episode of This is Infertility. This has become one of my personal favorite year-end and holiday traditions, so I'm extremely excited to share it with you here today. On this show, we share people's experience with fertility and family building, while also sharing the wisdom of some of the world's best experts in the space. And while we would love to shed a spotlight on each and every one of the guests who shared with us here today, well, that would be a very long and unwieldy episode. So our team spent some time and narrowed it down to just 4 guest stories that we will revisit here today. And by our team, I mean Lou Amar, who works at Progyny. And to be honest, I think Lou picked 4 great ones. I like to think that December is a time for optimism, a time to celebrate the year that was and think back on friendship, family, and support. So that's going to be the theme and the through line of today's episode. And with that, let's get going. I'm Dan Bulger with Progyny, and this is Infertility. All right, like I just said about 20 seconds ago, today we're going to focus on support. But before we get into support, we do want to address the other side of the coin. Sometimes when we share with our friends and our families something that we're going through and struggling with, we end up being met with a lot of unwanted advice. This advice is often good-natured. People really do just want to help, but of course, usually these people aren't experts, so it can be difficult to hear the advice at times. That is something that stood out to our guest, Hanna Peters, who shared her story with us in episode 183 titled Overcoming the Emotional Toll of Infertility.
Whether you know they're struggling to get pregnant or not, I've learned a lot in this process about what you shouldn't say to women or couples, because it's quite triggering. And then you start getting in your head and you're like, well, maybe I should just relax, and maybe I should put the calendar away, and maybe I should take Mucinex or whatever it is, and then when you try those things that your friends who easily get pregnant tell you to do, and then it doesn't work, it's just another little chipping away at the disappointment when you get the negative pregnancy test. So yeah, he and I would commiserate over like that was really annoying that was said to us, or that was really hard to hear that. And I didn't expect him to like empathize so well with that, but he did. And there was a little, like, I don't want to say joy, but it was kind of nice to be like angry at comments together too. Like that actually helped us get through it.
Hanna mentioned that she and her doctor kind of used the annoying comments from friends as a bit of a rallying cry. But that's not the only way that Hanna felt her doctor went above and beyond. It's perhaps obvious, but considering the way that so many of us tend to rely on the internet these days, it might be worth stating here that your doctor is the absolute right person to ask questions to. No one will know more about you and your situation than you and your doctor. So when it starts to get noisy all around you, just remember it's your doctor and the care team at the clinic, and if you're a Progyny member, your PCA and Progyny support team as well. These are the people that you should rely on.
I have nothing but wonderful things to say about them. Every time I went, it was fast, which at a doctor's office is not always the case, right? It was clean. They were kind. They were empathetic. Like, my doctor is fabulous. Like, even my communication with ACRM, I've got a specific care team that I can reach out to via email. I've got a scheduling team that I can reach out to via email, and I can reach out to my doctor if I ever want to. Like, I'm not blocked or gatekept from my doctor either, which I think is really important, especially when going through something as emotionally taxing and confusing as infertility and whatever the treatment course is that you end up taking, like you want to be able to talk to the expert of what's going on, and you want to be able to ask your question to someone that can give you like the answer that makes sense. And so the fact that I had so much access to them, even when I wasn't having actual appointments with ACRM, they blow me away.
When going through an infertility journey, there is no rule that you need to share experiences with the world. You don't have to tell your friends, you don't have to tell your family, you certainly don't have to post things on social media. But that being said, those who do share these things tend to find the experience to be very rewarding. By sharing, you really are helping people to know that they're not alone.
I've been very vocal about it, and with that have had the opportunity to have one-on-ones with women at my company that are going through the exact same thing, and I get to share with them how cool it is to have Progyny, what it means for them to have it, and even just give them a little bit of like shed some color on what the IVF process looks like, the shots, oh, you're going to get yourself hundreds of shots. You're going to feel like a doctor when you're done. Like even that. So I'm just very open about it because I think that people need to understand that they're not alone.
Hanna's openness at work and in her community has done wonders for so many who might otherwise have thought that they were going through this all alone. Each of us can make a difference in that way. And when we all speak out, we're very loud. But of course, sometimes speaking out isn't enough. The next guest we want to spotlight is Danielle Faith, who we featured during National Infertility Awareness Week in our episode titled #NIAW, A Path to Parenthood Turned into a Path to Purpose. In that episode, Danielle shared that she kind of always figured she'd need help building a family. And so when she ran into a doctor who didn't want to help her, well, she knew that she couldn't accept that as an answer.
After my endo diagnosis, I already had this feeling, like this intuition that I was going to have problems getting pregnant. Like I knew this. I don't know what it was inside of me that was just like, you're going to have to go through like real treatment in order to get pregnant. And, me and my husband had been together for 10 plus years at this point. And it was like, I haven't gotten pregnant yet. We haven't even had a pregnancy scare. So there's something not right. And so I went back to my OB and I was like, they diagnosed me, I have endo. What can you do for me? And her response is that I have to prove that I was trying for over a year before she would give me any type of medication, help me do any testing. And I didn't want to take that for an answer. It was like I was back in the zone of nobody listening to me again.
Danielle shared a very difficult story. She not only had to find a doctor, she dealt with poor coverage for treatment, and she experienced multiple pregnancy losses. She was really put through the ringer, but she kept going. And with the help of her doctor, she found success.
We ended up getting pregnant again with our first transfer November of 2020 and lost it. A chemical pregnancy. Pretty much like the same thing happened, but this time, of course, we didn't tell anybody. And I remember the call afterwards. My doctor, who, like I said, is, he was like, I would get so upset with like things failing, but as soon as she called me, it was like this relief. And she just had this way of doing that, which is incredible out of a doctor. But she's talking about all these tests that we could do. Okay, we need to do this time. We need to do karyotype testing. We need to do, testing on both of you. I don't even know if I can continue this again. I don't even know if I can if these fail, I don't know if I even have it in me to do another round of IVF. And my deductible is going to start over. So like, this has to happen now. This has to happen. So she agreed with it. And we went through with that transfer December 19th of 2020, and that transfer resulted in my now 2-year-old daughter.
After reaching her goal and becoming a mom, Danielle knew that her mission wasn't done. So she founded a nonprofit organization called Making a Miracle.
So Making a Miracle is an organization that gives resources, emotional support, and We're working on the financial support now, but it's just an organization that is like no other in the area that actually brings this community together, makes you feel like that there's somebody there, you know?
Doctors are the best source of truth when going through a fertility journey. And nonprofit organizations like Making a Miracle can be a huge help along the way. But this year, we also heard from many people who had a different kind of support. Those who have fertility treatment covered by their employers have access to the care that they need, and when they get that coverage through Progyny, the support that they receive is really unparalleled. Progyny member Jennifer Osmond, who had access to the Progyny benefit through her employer, AT&T, shared some of her experience with her Progyny benefit in episode 189 titled Teamwork Makes a Dream Work: How Jennifer's Village Made Parenthood Possible. That's a very long title. Here's Jennifer sharing a little about how this kind of support from her employer makes her feel.
Lucky that AT&T does support that. It's definitely made me even more ride or die for the company, and the fact that they support you through it, and they even offer emotional support, physical support for you during this time too. It just makes you see a company in a different light.
I think this is a good time to remind you that if you don't have access to the Progyny benefit, you might be able to get it through work. We have resources that can help you make that ask at www.progyny.com/talk-to-HR. Of course, Jennifer had additional support on her journey as well.
I give 99.9% credit to my wife. She did all my scheduling, she organized all my shots, she did all my orders, she bought a box that organized everything. We had a chart that had a timing frames on it. I basically turned up to appointments. I was told when my shots were, and because she wanted to play such a big part of that, and she'd spent so much time doing the studying, I kind of let her lead on that. And I said, mentally, for me, going to appointments Monday, Wednesday, Friday for blood work, doing the retrieval, the transfer, the genetic testing, and all the other things that I did, that was, mentally that was enough for me. And then she had all the time frames for me. So definitely teamwork.
Finally, that brings us to the last guest that we'll spotlight for you here in our year-end recap. We actually have to go back to episode 1 of season 7 for this one. It's episode 174, titled Becoming a Single Parent by Choice, IVF plus a Sperm Donor. In that episode, Lakia Holmes first shared how none of her experiences would have been the same without support from her employer through Progyny.
I like to think about, what if I didn't have the benefit? Who knows how long it would have taken me to even, start the process, to even just be able to start the conversation, to get a recommendation like, hey, do you know a clinic possibly that I could go to, like where I can just kind of explore my options, stuff like that. So if I didn't have that knowledge at the time, who knows how long it would have taken me to really maybe put 2 and 2 together and say, wait, there could be something here that you need to look at.
Lakia entered the fertility world when she chose to freeze her eggs for fertility preservation. She wasn't in a relationship, she was focusing hard on her career, and so she wanted to be proactive. But in the process of freezing her eggs, she actually received an infertility diagnosis. One of her fallopian tubes was completely blocked, and the other was partially blocked. This meant that conceiving naturally down the line would be extremely unlikely. She moved ahead with the egg freezing cycle, now knowing full well that if she were to try for a baby, she almost certainly would need IVF. And then she carried on with her life.
You have to change, I guess, in some ways how you approach dating. And so my approach after hearing the IVF news was that, okay, I have to date with intention and just kind of let them know, maybe not necessarily off the bat, but it's a conversation that needs to happen because not everyone is kind of prepared for that. And so I think the biggest thing for me is just kind of making them aware, like, this is what the reality is. And so, it's something that we have to think about.
Flash forward a bit, and Lakia actually decided to move ahead with a round of IVF using a sperm donor. And flashing further a bit more, she became a mother. And she wanted to make it clear that none of this would have been nearly as easy, or maybe even possible, if she didn't have so much support.
You know, if I had the opportunity to sit in front of, you know, whoever it is at Warner Brothers Discovery who, you know, said, like, this is what we're offering our employees, I would just say thank you. Thank you so much, because I don't know if I'd be able to do it without Progyny's benefits.
As I said, this episode is about support. And well, I think support is what really makes a difference to people. Yes, we spoke a bit about the Progyny benefit and the amazing support it gives our members, but we also heard about the doctors. We heard about spouses, and we heard about nonprofit organizations. The point is that support can be found if you look for it. For you, maybe it's family, or maybe it's friends. Maybe it's a support group on Facebook, or it's a local support group run through Resolve, the National Infertility Association. But if you find yourself feeling like support is lacking, like you're all alone, well, I just encourage you to look around. Sometimes support can come from places you don't expect. And while I couldn't possibly know your specific circumstances, I can say that we've been doing this show long enough to know that you really aren't alone. With that, I want to thank you all for joining us today. For everyone who stayed with us all season, thank you. We put a lot into the show, and we hope you get a lot out of it. I want to thank today's guests, Hanna, Danielle, Jennifer, and Lakia, once again for sharing their stories. And I also want to send a thank you to all the guests that we had throughout the year, Progyny members, nonprofit leaders, doctors, authors, experts, and everyone in between. The show simply wouldn't exist without all of you. Finally, I want to thank the rest of the podcast team. I certainly don't do this alone. A big thank you to Selena Yang, Lou Amar, and Mei Fang for all the hard work week in and week out. There's actually quite a few people in the organization who I should thank, but to thank them all might take all day, so I'll just extend a big thank you to the entire Progyny family. It takes all of us to do what we do, so thank you all for your support. If you want to connect with us, you can do so on Instagram at This Is Infertility Podcast. If you want to follow Progyny, you can do that at Progyny Inc. Of course, if you're listening on a podcast app, please leave a rating and review. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. This is Infertility is brought to you by Progyny. Please remember, this podcast is not intended to substitute for the personalized expert advice of your physician. I'm Dan Bulger, and this is Infertility.